Hey loves, it's Britt, and in this video I'm going to talk about what it means to have your Mars square or opposite to someone's Saturn in Synastry, or vice versa. This is a particularly karmic aspect. I would say all interaspects of Saturn in Synastry tend to be pretty karmic and fated and significant and hard. This one would probably lean on the side of being more difficult or more showing of negative karma. Um, and just because it's negative karma doesn't mean that it can't be resolved in this lifetime, but if you believe in past lives, I would say Mars in hard aspect to Saturn or Pluto can show that there's been violence in a past life, or it can also continue in this life sometimes. Um, with Mars Saturn, there can be a lot of resentment because Saturn, the Saturn person, can feel like the cold or hard hand blocking Mars from getting whatever it is that Mars wants. So you have to look at the nature of the Mars persons of Mars and see, how they're going after what they want, and their ego energies, their masculine energies are going to feel thwarted at times by the Saturn person. The Saturn person is like the cold father figure at times, and the Mars person can feel blocked or feel angry at Saturn for being so difficult. And you have to look at the nature of the Saturn person's Saturn too to see how they're doing that. Because, like, for example, I have my Saturn in Pisces, so my Saturn is not particularly like firm or Saturny, it's so when my Saturn is square or opposite to someone's Mars, it's not being cold or strict or hard on Mars. It's more just like opening up Mars to a more spiritual or emotional dimension, which, if we've got a Mars in Gemini or a Mars in Sag person or a Mars in Virgo, they're like gonna feel blocked by that, but it's not gonna be the same as if we've got someone with a Saturn in Capricorn and someone's Mars in Aries is making a tight square to it. That Mars in Aries person is going to feel like Saturn is the cold father figure that, isn't allowing them to just act and assert and be. But that's just, the more negative manifestation we can see with this aspect is Mars feeling super like thwarted. It's interesting how much sexual attraction there can actually be with this aspect. And I feel like that's something that's often missed in the astrology books is even though this is a tense aspect and this is considerably, or, probably one of the most difficult aspects you could have in your synastry, it does lead to a pretty highly sexual overlay, at least at the beginning, or not overlay, or energy, and the Saturn person can feel that the Mars person is insanely hot, okay, while simultaneously they can feel super judgy of the Mars person, feel like the way that the Mars person acts, the way that they assert themselves, even though it does something to them, they can actually have a lot of sexual attraction to them, but it's like they can feel like the Saturn person feels like they need to mold the Mars person into a better version of themselves. They can help the Mars person be better and do better, and depending on the nature of their Saturn, they're going to tell them that, and then the Mars person is going to react like, you don't know me, like, you don't get to tell me what to do because this is a square or an opposition. So it's it's super interesting. But the Mars person can feel like the Saturn person on the best level, on the highest level of this happening, can feel that the Saturn person actually helps them. Like Mars is such an impulsive part of us. It's kind of like a childlike part of us where we just act without thinking. Yeah, so it's not like a super mature part of us, whereas Saturn is the most mature part of us. It's our ancient wisdom and our karmic lessons and an energy that we've come to master. So it's very different to what Mars is in our natal, right? So the Mars person, and hopefully there's other good aspects or easier aspects going on here between that person's Saturn as well. The Mars person can grow to feel like Saturn actually helps them become better. Okay. And they can feel super sexually attracted to Saturn, but also very awkward. They can both feel very awkward. Okay. And you'll see that with Venus Saturn and Synastry too, is there's a ton of sexual attraction, romantic attraction more with Venus Saturn, but it's very awkward. It's very hard to get the relationship going, and that's what we can kind of see with Mars Saturn too in a tense aspect, is that there can be tons of attraction, but both people feel super awkward, and they can feel, Mars can feel thwarted. They want to make a move, and maybe they do make a move. Maybe they overcompensate depending on what their Mars is. Maybe they overcompensate by being super direct and super Martian or aggressive towards Saturn when they are coming on to them, if this is a sexual relationship. And Saturn, it's like can feel also very awkward, and feel like Saturn can feel like and even if Saturn is the younger partner, if there's a difference in age, Saturn can feel like this old, crusty old man or woman, and feel like Mars is like this hot young thing or whatever, and they can feel very awkward, so there can be a lot of nervousness or awkwardness simultaneously occurring with like a ton of attraction, with almost nowhere to go if we don't have other aspects that are more compatible. So it's just a super interesting aspect. Not surprised why this was requested, because it's such a mind fuck for lack of better words there. With the opposition, this is a bit easier to resolve. As I always say with the oppositions, we're more alike with the opposition, but what tends to happen with the opposition is that we battle for dominance. And with a square too, we can see that, where this can be like both Mars and Saturn do not want to back down from this battle, whatever it is we're battling about with a Mars-Saturn square or opposition. They can start to battle each other, and nobody wants to submit here. So it can be an aspect of constantly trying to one up your partner or win the battle, whatever it is, or prove that you're right. So the only way that this aspect can work in a relationship is Mars needs to simmer down and let Saturn be the boss sometimes and be guiding them sometimes. And they need to realize that Saturn, in most cases, is well-meaning towards them. It's just the way that they assert their authority over Mars really pisses them off. But if they can realize that Saturn has some gifts for them, has some wisdom for them, can help them be a better version of their Mars, hopefully, if Saturn is not just a totally abusive person who just wants to like squelch Mars in every way. But if Saturn is actually coming from love and is actually like, if this is a relationship that has other aspects that are loving and show a good relationship, Mars needs to realize that Saturn is just trying to help, and they need to allow Saturn's help sometimes. And Saturn needs to realize that without trying, they can be, they can be downplaying Mars's abilities, and they need to learn how to be nicer to Mars and be more open. It's like Mars is here to really open up Saturn so that Saturn can be less tight and less rigid and structured, and Mars can help Saturn really lighten the F up and just, be able to relax more and be more instinctual. And so really it can end up being a helpful relationship, and I think that's the karmic purpose of it. But it can be extremely difficult, not to be understated. This is one of the most difficult aspects you could have in your synastry. Not for the faint of heart. And it does show a certain karma. So the karma could be violence. It could be someone, probably Saturn, trying to tone down Mars. And in this lifetime, that's not what is supposed to happen karmically. This is like, you're here to resolve this if you're in this relationship. So you both need to do those things that I say, or listen to your own internal guidance of what is the best course of action with this tough one you've got here. The opposition is going to be more easier to resolve. The square is going to be more like constant tension here, butting up against each other all the time. But it can definitely work. That it can show that you care about each other a lot. It's interesting how sticky Saturn is, like glue, sticky like glue, and Mars Saturn is no different. It definitely can show that there's a lot of feeling here, and a lot of sexual energy that once it has its outlet, it can be very long lasting. It can be a very deep connection with a lot of learning and growth. But Saturn needs to chill out, be less critical of Mars, and Mars needs to understand that Saturn is just trying to guide and help. And it's crazy how this aspect can manifest, though, in those kind of ways. I'd love to know your experience as well of this one, how it was. It's definitely one to note that, like, there's certain aspects that are just red flags. Like I talked about Mars Pluto the other day. Mars Saturn is similar. It can be very toxic. It can end up being like we just can't find resolution, because Mars and Saturn can be so standoffish towards each other. It's almost easier to have like Moon Saturn or Venus Saturn, because Venus or Moon is a more feminine energy, that it can listen to Saturn's guidance better. But Mars is like, no, I don't want to. And then they're both just like constantly fighting, or if they're not a more fighting Mars, then they're just going to squelch themselves and tone themselves down too much, and then that's going to lead to resentment. I can't be myself. I can't assert myself sexually. I can't be my masculine energy self. Like, so it's tough. It's difficult. It definitely shows some type of karma. You could meditate on what the past life was and what you guys did to each other, because probably did something, especially if this aspect is going on a double whammy, that is very, very karmic and like almost eerie past life vibes. Someone has done something to the other with this aspect. So it's tough. It can be hard to live with someone. It would be easier in like a business relationship or a non-romantic relationship, but you still, even in that, it's going to feel like there's something heavy here. There's some immovable object. Saturn can feel like this immovable object, and you just can't get through. You just can't be yourself. And it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of effort on the part of both people to make this one work. But it's not impossible. With other good synastry and a good composite chart, nothing is impossible. And if you have this one, I wish you the best of luck. It's going to take a lot of internal work and growth to be able to successfully relate in this aspect, but it's definitely possible. And I think, this aspect is never, or usually it's not going to be occurring in isolation. There could be other combinations that could make this easier. Like, you could have other things going on, like, maybe you've got Saturn square Mars, but then you've got Venus trine Mars, and then, that's going to be really helpful. So, anyways, I'd love to know your thoughts on this aspect. Love you guys. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks for requesting. Let me know if you have any more requests. Comment them and I will add them to my list. Okay. Love you guys. Bye.